Hello people, and welcome to BTG. This is your host, Mr. Shaker. You may know me from such songs as After Call and You Shoulda Took the... And today I wanted to discuss what I was speaking of in regards to my last video, in regards to the technocracy. But if you look at the structure that I have now, this is the killing floor that I was referring to previously, and as you see, I have this implemented here at this outpost, and right now I'm just trying to test its effectiveness, and that way I can propagate this design through different outposts. So anyways, oh dang, what the heck? So anyways, as I was saying, I heard a lot of negative criticism in regards to a technocracy, or technocrats at least, and from what I've seen thus far, people always equate a technocrat with a dictator, I believe that is the first mistake people make when they're referring to a technocracy. But the little definition of a technocracy is when those who are experts in their field are involved with the policy. So someone that's within the IT field is involved with technology or certain computer laws that might be implemented, and the farmers involved with the agricultural laws, and some environmentalist, or I guess it would depend, because I was about to say someone who's in charge of nuclear waste, but I don't think you would want to give them, because if they are biased, then the EPA probably wouldn't be, it probably wouldn't have individuals' best interest in mind, or the majority of the people, such as the health of the environment, which is similar to even if there was some oil company, and that could also occur with that certain bias. So I was going to say, just in regards to the technocracy, I think the only issue that you could have with it is it depends who's going to appoint these officials, or because I guess based on who's going to appoint these officials, because all we know, it could be similar to an oligarchy where, because if somebody had a family, or nepotism, or someone could have some family members that knows that has an idea in regards to which fields they're supposed to operate. If you have a doctor that writes the healthcare bills, and I mean the healthcare bills in regards to the economy, or how much money should be dedicated to health, for all you know, the doctor could go against a Hippocratic oath or somehow twist it and say, well, I'm helping out the patient by helping out myself. So if I take more off my plate, then it's better for the patient, because then I can perform well, or I can perform better because I'm getting paid more. So it's tough to really say who would be entirely in charge of that oversight, because I believe that is definitely the main issue, is because if you did have someone that's in the IT field, which does cover many different fields, like you can't, like, pretty much for IT, it's I'm just not thinking how you would describe IT exactly, because just the amount of, like, see, the way IT works, it's almost as though it's like, because it can apply to anything almost. Like, you can have healthcare plus the IT industry equals healthcare technology. Politics plus the IT industry gives you, I guess I wouldn't say political technology, but could be data-driven politics, where the data within the politics can be improved and be more efficient and centralized. Really, you can combine IT with major fields, which is well, I guess some people don't believe computology is an actual science, which I still would have to argue that criminology would be a similar science as equivalent to what do you call it? It would be equivalent to I would say computology as well, since it's made up just like computology, since computology is the study of computation or computers, which is pretty broad. But then criminology, which only deals with criminal behavior, which when you think about it, criminal behavior is only determined in regards to which laws are being broke. And if those laws did not exist, or if they did not break the laws, then the science or the study of criminals wouldn't actually make much sense. When you think about it, it's a made-up science, just like it's a made-up science, just similar to computer science. It's man-made, so I think the same rules would apply to that as well. But so, anyways, I was saying with the technocracy, the state who's in charge of appointing these individuals, I really wouldn't be able to say who would be in charge. Because I remember I was speaking with one individual, and I was saying, what if a philosopher was in charge of appointing these individuals based on their merit or what they feel is most important? Like if you had the farmers, not towards the top, but had them, I can't even say second place because I'm not even sure it would be first or second, or first or third to begin with. However, I mean, farmers are important because they grow food, and of course you have individuals that are in computers, which I would say elevates. Oh, I guess that's what I would say. The IT field's almost like one of those booster cards for Pokemon, where you have like where you have like 15 different booster cards. Or several different booster cards where it makes your Pokemon that much more effective. And I'll say it has a different, how would you say? It has a, than if it were, then rather without it. Because without the computers, then the fields would probably be how they were back in the 20th century. Which I think that it could have still, I mean, I would probably say mostly with the internet, if the internet didn't exist. But since it does exist, things are a little more efficient rather than someone having to take a higher capacity storage device. Because if you had to do that, then I guess that could make things efficient. Well, I guess I'm just thinking of storage and data transfer. Which, even though you could have an intranet, but it wouldn't be an internet where people, or even an extranet where different companies are connecting to each other. However, it just wouldn't be as efficient with all the data that we have now, and how everything could be transferred so much more efficiently. But anyways, in regards to the technocracy I was stating, I think the issue is who appoints, because I remember someone was saying really the negative thought of a technocracy was just that they were just thinking how effective it was at governance, and someone was citing McNamara's failures within Vietnam as more or less the reason why a technocracy would be a failure. And I'm thinking, well, McNamara was only one individual, and he was the Secretary of Defense. So when you think of someone such as McNamara was only focused on war, and he was just pretty much, he thought that quantitative data or numbers, how many people pretty much were, I guess how many casualties of war there were on the enemy side determined who won the battle. Which I'm thinking maybe if they had someone else conduct or configure that formula, maybe it would have been, maybe there would have been a better outcome. However, people would like to cite that example as the McNamara effect. However, McNamara was only one individual, and even if you want to cite him as a technocrat, I don't exactly know McNamara's background if it was in mathematics or statistics or just politics or the art of war. But all I know is that if you're going to cite an example of a technocrat, then cite a mathematician, pretty much given the wrong formula for the Ebola crisis, since the CDC do have jobs, or the last time I checked, which was quite some time ago, they had a job for mathematician, which I'm guessing if you've ever seen Contagion, they use mathematicians to study the pattern of certain bacteria or viruses, and I guess they also paired them with an epidemiologist as well, and they figure out what or how this disease will spread. And I guess similar to the patterns, like if you know a certain pattern, such as, let's say, if you saw the bacteria go up from 2, 4, 6, 8, you know that and you say that it would multiply, the amount of bacteria would go from 2, 4, 6, 8 each week, and you know that it's multiplying by 2 each and every week. So if you know the pattern, you can find the formula. However, complex formulas that involve the natural logarithm, which I'm certain that a mathematician would be able to spot since they're always around numbers. And also you want the epidemiologist who could give you the correct data, which if you wanted to judge that as just that example as a technocracy, that is the mathematician combined with the epidemiologist, that is a perfect example of technocracy working. However, which usually it's a health official from time to time, and it can be most of the time it is a doctor who's in charge. I'm thinking, who else would you hire? You would have to be a doctor since they know a bit about health and whatnot. And thing is, I guess you would want the doctor who knows a bit about epidemics to also be in charge, or even just the best health practices. So I think that would be the best option. However, when you think about it, that's the doctor in charge of being in charge of the CDC. And the thing is, doctor would be appointed, or that individual is going to be appointed rather than hired. So, for them to be hired, they have to be appointed. So in that regard, the question is, who appoints them? Is it someone that we vote for? Or is it going to be someone based on their other credentials, which, when you think about it, the technocracy could also be based on the meritocracy as well. Based on someone's merit and what they know, that would determine who's going to be in charge of that position and who's going to be in second place. And also, you can't exactly just have them based on their credentials and just from their knowledge, because there's people who are experts where they actually aren't really that great at performance, I would say emotionally, such as certain astronauts, where they take some of the best and brightest experts in their field. However, when these individuals are met with a certain circumstance, such as being isolated from individuals for a longer period of time, then it creates that adversity where that either makes them or breaks them. And so you want the best and the brightest, but a stronger emphasis on the best. And by the best or the strongest, you mean mentally strong rather than physically strong. Reminds me of that test that the Navy performed where for the SEALs training, they have the people bob in the pool, and they pretty much put their hands behind their back, and they're not supposed to separate them. I'm uncertain if they tie their hands behind their back, or if they just force them. Like, just say, okay, make sure you keep your hands behind your back. If you remove your hands from your back, behind your back, then you're out, because you obviously don't want to be a SEAL since you can't deal with the training. The thing is, they have them do all these twirls within the water, and as they stated, the water it's pretty much I forgot what they call it. I know they call it like something in regards to it being the breaker of individuals, or the equalizer of sorts, because they said no matter how big or small you are, water makes us all equal in regards to, depending on whether or not you're a good swimmer. I guess that'll also make a difference. But they were just stating that in regards to someone not being able to breathe, that is what would make someone equal in that regard. Because it doesn't matter how strong you are, how fast you are, and I guess it would matter on how much endurance you have, which, I mean, they try these people throughout the day or for a long period of time. So if we're talking about people not having breaks for hours and they're just in the pool, eventually that endurance that you have is going to eventually wear out, and all you're going to have left is just your willpower. Which I know some people, Trump stated that he thought that willpower was limited. However, I don't believe that's the case, because I believe that, like, there has certain experiments where they're stating that, or certain studies where some individual was, where some individual had to, I guess, perform a complex math problem, and they gave the people, when the people were answering the questions and they were getting frustrated, they gave one group of individuals cookies, and the other ones were radish, and the other ones they gave them radishes. And the people that had the radishes rather than the cookies quit on the task earlier, because I guess the cookies gave people an extra boost of willpower, which, if your willpower is being restored, does it indicate that there's a limit? And I still don't believe so, because I know that people have certain levels of tolerance, which means the only thing that's stopping an individual from doing what they want to do is their own will. Because, I mean, it's your mind. It doesn't require that many calories to stay afloat. It doesn't require that much protein to stay strong. Maybe a little bit of exercise here and there, even yoga, but at the end of the day, it is your mind. You only got to restore it by going to sleep, not by performing a certain, I mean, the only exercise you have to perform is by learning, and really there's no real limit on how much you can learn. Or at least certain individuals have not found a limit on that. So since you can always grow, that means potentially at the end of the day, everyone could become a genius if they practice enough and if they are older. Which I guess reminds you of that thing in that one line in Incredibles when he stated, "If everyone is super, then no one will be." Which I guess it would raise the standard of thought per se. But I was saying, I guess it would depend on who's in charge of the technocracy, who controls that thought, or those leaders that are in charge. I mean, is it just that these individuals naturally just get in these positions and then they wind up applying for the job? And like I said, who decides who's in charge of this? Because like I was stating before, even if these people are experts in their fields, if they had certain ideologies, such as if they promoted Nazism, then that would be a problem, no matter if they were the best in their field, because they're always going to have that hidden agenda. So that's where you want to be careful. And I don't know, like I said, it would depend on who's in charge of these, who would be in charge of that technocracy. Me myself, I didn't see what was exactly wrong with it, if it was implemented correctly. I mean, I do see how people say communism, which I remember Crowder actually stated it wrong, where he was stating that socialism and communism were equal, where if you listen to the definitions on this one video, I'll probably post a link of that as well in the description, where it stated that socialism was created, socialism was created out of Marxism, and Marxism was the idea from which the people like Karl Marx and Lenin, they pretty much observed their economic systems, and they believed that socialism was the answer, and that was pretty much it. But communism is supposed to be based on community. Not exactly they're equated, at least according to the definitions in that one video, which I believe he missed a few pointers there. But anyways, I was just stating that I'm not sure if you could say, take into account that communism's implemented correctly, because at the end of the day, when you think about it, if someone was selfish within communism, that's all it takes to ruin it. People would have to want to work together, which, when you think about capitalism, at the end of the day, it is going to have the people who aren't the most selfish, because those who are the most selfish wind up losing the most workers. When you look at a place like Google, who may give someone a generous salary and has a great work environment, some people are going to wind up going towards them. And eventually, if the company winds up, I guess for lack of better words, trumping all of the other companies in business, then eventually that company would then become the government. Like if Google became rich to the point where they were I don't know what you call that, a monopoly of some sorts, or where they almost or nearly monopolized multiple different businesses, then eventually they would have to build the roads. Eventually they would have to provide healthcare to all. Eventually they would just have cities full of companies, or not cities full of companies, but cities that surround the company, which reminds me of those towns where they were based on one industry. An industry gave them all jobs, and once they left, it was all gone. But I don't know, I guess it depends on how you look at the technocracy, see how that's implemented. But anyways, people, that's all for now. And until next time, this is Mr. Shaker, and I'm out.